What?
Why is that like the comment?
It's like, it's green tea.
I thought it was like all the countries. I was like, are you just like retesting them for it? Or?
Okay, so we're gonna hope that the volume works here for Jackie.
That looks like literal green tea.
And for any of you who need to go back and review this, because we're
It
gonna
does.
It's
on
literally
go
green
turbo.
tea.
We're like the poor Chpt classes today. Okay. Economists are scientists. We talked a little bit about the difference between the soft science and the hard science earlier. Despite the fact that economics is a soft science, economists are actually scientists. They do two things. They try to explain what's going on in the world out there, and then they try to recommend ways to improve it. But improvement is subjective, right? I happen to think David would look better with a shorter haircut. David believes that to improve his look, he should grow it out and do pigtails. So improving is subjective, and in economics, generally subject to political biases. Okay? So in order to explain the world, the scientific method actually comes into play. Hypothesis testing, all that. It actually comes into play. Okay? To test things in economics, we develop models, which are little kind of microcosms of the actual world. A model that you guys have all used at some point in your life would be a map. It is not an actual representation of the world. If it was, every interstate would be red, right? And have a major sign implanted in the ground every few miles, right? The big little shield sign. If a map were an actual representation of the world. Right? Okay. Okay, so we have to make assumptions. We have to assume certain things. Okay? And those assumptions are based on generalizations to some extent, but they're also based on fact and realistic generalizations. That is a really odd color, Kyle. That's
It's tea.
It's tea. Okay. Green tea. All right. So you're a healthy boy. Trying? Okay. Because the world is so really complex, we make assumptions and we take some of the complexity out of it. We try to simplify things a little bit. So when we study international trade, we don't study international trade between 100 and some countries. We take two countries, and each one of them has a good, and we talk about international trade in that context. To attempt to understand international trade by just looking at what is being traded today would blow your minds. So, although those assumptions and the models that we use aren't exactly realistic, they do help you to gain an understanding of the world as it is. Okay? Here's the book's definition of model. It's that highly simplified representation of the world. Again, it is used in conjunction with the assumptions to allow us to study something that is infinitely complex. This is no different than your drawing of a cell in your 7th grade biology class, right? That was a model. It was not an actual cell. Until we become cyborgs and have microscopes implanted into one eye, and you're going to have to operate in the world of models. Okay, so your roadmap, the visible woman, the skeleton hanging in the corner, these are all models. Okay? Model airplane, a model car, a Barbie doll. Okay, all models. Wow, you guys are dead today. Okay, moving on. All right. One of the models that we will use a great deal in economics to understand how things work is called the circular flow. The circular flow will seem a little complex, will seem a little overwhelming at the outset when first we look at it. But by mastering the circular flow, by gaining a thorough understanding of how it works and what goes where, you'll really be able to process everything else we do this semester and next on into macro. Okay? It shows not just how dollars flow through the economy, but dollars are usually exchanged for what? Goods or services, okay? And so you have to know how those things flow, as well as the resources that are used to produce the goods and services. And then we get a little more complex and we introduce taxation, savings, those kinds of things. Okay. In the circular flow, there are two groups. We have households and we have firms. It's another word for firms that we might use. Businesses. Yeah. You will be better off if you will train yourself to use firms. You'll be more easily understood in the world of economics. Okay? There are two markets in the circular flow. The market for goods and services and the market for the factors of production. The market for the factors of production is called the resource market. The resource market. Pretty picture, Tony. Well, that's from last year, isn't it?
Yep.
That's what you were saying that you had. Nice. All right. Do you have that old book on your?
No, I just have
Oh,
the
notes.
that I took.
Nice. Nice. What software do you use on the iPad for that?
Evernote.
Evernote?
Yeah,
Okay.
Evernote's the best.
Evernote, for those of you who are iPad users, integrates what you get off of the web with your written notes very well. Okay. What are factors of production? Factors of production are the things we use to make the things we use. Land, labor, capital. And when I say capital, I'm not talking about financial capital, which you think of as money. I'm talking about capital goods, things like factories and machinery and equipment. If you are a baker, your oven is a capital good. Your mixer is a capital good. Your natural resources would be the flour and the sugar and the water. And your labor. Oh, too fast? Too fast. I'll give you a fighting chance at it anyway. But if you've read and taken notes, shouldn't you have most of this down? That's right. Those of you sitting out there chilling, not scribbling like crazy. I can tell. I can tell. So you're not going to be able to keep up in here or in an actual college class if you don't come prepared. Right? Right?
Correct.
Okay, so what's circular flow look like? Households on the right. Guess what goes on the left? Firms. Okay, we've got to put our two markets in here. We'll break all that down later. Factors of production, or what should you call it? Resource markets, down at the bottom. The resource market. In the resource market, households sell their land, labor, and capital, and firms buy the land, labor, and capital. In exchange for land, labor, and capital, firms pay wages, rent, and profit. The households turn that around and call it income. Now the next step should be pretty easy. What do you do when you have money in your pocket?
Spend it.
Yay! So you're going to go to the product market. Opposite the resource market is the product market. And that's where you're going to take that income and you're going to spend it. Your outgo is someone else's intake, which for firms is known as revenue. Money, money, money. And then what do firms send to the product market that makes you want to send your hard-earned income?
Product.
The products or the services. Everybody get that abbreviation, G&S? Goods and services. Abbreviations are going to become a major part of your life in here. You won't be able to keep up if you can't shorten it up. This is the most simplified version of the circular flow. We will revisit it later and add some complexity. David, you look like you were just going to your happy place. This is seriously, when I said that, we'll revisit it later and add some complexity. Is that upsetting to think about this getting harder? You just forgot to breathe for a while, didn't you?
Remembering.
Oh. Remembering complexity?
Remembering. Because
This is basic. Yeah. Common sense, for the most part, right?
Yeah.
We just took what you already knew and drew it out. Right? And we gave it fancy econ names. Okay. Now, the PPF, the Production Possibilities Frontier. This is a huge deal. This is fundamental. Okay? You can't go on if you don't get this. The PPF shows a combination of two goods an economy can produce and the relationship between those. Our economy can produce, one of the classics that economists have always used is our economy can produce guns or it can produce butter. Okay? Basically, this is the difference between food and war. An economy can do. Okay? Now, can you do all butter? Yeah, you could. You could. It may make you vulnerable, but is an economy capable of producing only one good? Yeah, you could choose to do that. Could your economy forego the production of butter and produce only guns? Absolutely it could. Do economies end up somewhere in between? Generally, yes. It is the blend of those two that develops the production possibilities frontier. Okay? Computers and wheat. Okay? It's what we're going to use in this textbook. A little less militant. And yet, still we feed our people. Okay? One resource on this graph. How much labor can your economy produce? We're not worried about silicone and computer chips and plastics and silver and actual grain. We're just going to use labor to produce these goods. Okay? So in our economy here, we have 50,000 hours of labor to use every month. What can we do with that? Well, we have to make some assumptions here. We have to let go of some things that probably will nag at you in the back of your head. For instance, I can't grow wheat in a month, right? There's no insta-grow wheat. I don't care how much Miracle-Gro you've got, it's not happening, okay? Likewise, some months are different than others. How much wheat do we produce in Nebraska in February? In a normal February in Nebraska. I know we've had some 80-degree February days in the past, but, right? So we have to let all of that go and assume that every month is the same as the other, and that if we can produce, we can produce, okay? So here's where your not what-ifing comes into play. All right, so we can put all 50,000 hours of labor towards computers, which leaves us 0 hours of labor to produce wheat. And we will produce then 500 computers a month. And so on. You cannot leave labor unused. You cannot create new labor. For those of you for whom I'm going too fast, this will be up on my YouTube channel and I will link it to my website. so that you can go back and fill in what you may be missing as we dash along here, okay? So we can have, at the extremes, 500 computers a month or 5,000 bushels of wheat. Okay? Okay, so you've all had, like, algebra, right? So we can graph this without too much difficulty. You do not need to go buy and graph paper, okay? After a certain point, our graphs will no longer have numbers on the side. Okay, these are approximations, they are representations there, so you get the idea. Okay, ruler, a French curve, not necessary to make it in here. Okay, so there's our 500 computers and no wheat. There, if we connect the dots, we have our PPF. Okay. Get yourself in tune with this abbreviation for Production Possibilities Frontier. Production Possibilities Frontier shows the combination of goods that you can make between any two goods in an economy utilizing one resource. Kyle?
No. I thought when you like get to the edge of something, it's not as efficient, so like you can't have as many. You don't.
We're not there yet. We're not there yet. We're still very basic model. Yes, you're right, but we'll get there. Okay. All right. Why is this graph a straight line? Because there is a fixed trade-off. There's a fixed trade-off. The ratio between what you give up and what you get is constant. Okay? Our labor is equally good at producing computers or wheat. Farmer can walk out of the field and into the factory and he's going to produce just as much computer as he did wheat. I saw your brows go together there, Mac. Or Swift. Assume, okay? Our labor is interchangeable. Okay? We know in the real world that doesn't happen, okay? Just like the guy gluing microchips to a motherboard probably can't go out and fix a broken axle on a tractor. But for our example. Okay. So, on the graph, we're going to create a new point where we have 100 computers and 3,000 tons of wheat, and we're going to label it F. And then we have to decide, could that happen? So 100 computers, 3,000 tons of wheat. Max, can you go up and point to us where that would be? Would it be possible for our economy to produce at that point? How do you know that? Because it's inside the curve, meaning that we have enough resources to be able to do it. Okay. Should we produce there?
No.
Why not?
It's inefficient.
It's inefficient. We're wasting something, right? There are people taking too many breaks at the factory or at the farm, right? Somebody's sleeping under the oak tree at the edge of the pasture. Or somebody is stealing computer components and building their own computers at home. I don't know, something. Too many sick days. We've got a problem if we are inside the curve, okay? A point inside the curve represents inefficient use of resources. Straight up just gave you a quiz question and answer. Okay, now point G, 300 computers and 3,500 tons of wheat. Can we do this?
Yes.
No, Bob the Builder is going to be so disappointed with us, but no, we can't. Right? No, we can't. Why? Why can't we? That curve, and we call it a curve despite the fact that it's straight, okay? That the production possibilities frontier shows the maximum extent of production we can get with the resources we have. So how do we get to G? People who haven't had, nice try. How do we get to G?
Get rid of labor laws and make them slaves.
Oh, slavery. Let's say that our PPF is already, we are a slave labor system already. How do we get to G? Wait another month. What's another month going to get us?
More work hours?
You can't
Combine.
Overtime.
You can't get to G, says Swift, because you can't just make more labor.
But you can combine with another person and use their resources as well.
Oh, you're talking about trade, which makes everyone better off, right? But this is in our country. The only way to move the PPF out, okay? The only way to move the PPF out is to introduce more resources or what?
More labor hours.
That would be our resource, isn't it? We have one resource in this graph, so we have to make more people, basically. Or give them less sleep, or change labor laws and make them work 24/7. Right? Slaves don't have to eat. We'll just work them until they die. Well, I don't care. I need to hit that quota right now. You're what ifing, okay? The only way to reach a point outside the PPF is to increase the inputs, to increase the resources, or improve technology. Or improve technology. So let's assume that despite the fact that our economy is producing both computers and wheat, we are producing that wheat without the use of tractors. We have no internal combustion engines in our economy. We have computers, no internal combustion engines. Let's just go there, okay? So to improve technology, we introduce the diesel engine and John Deere, okay? Now, with improved technology, is our labor more efficient?
Yes.
And so then could we move out to that point with our PPF? Yes, right? So either more resources or better technology. That's the two ways you can improve your PPF. Okay? All right. Points on the PPF are possible, attainable, desirable. They are efficient. Efficient is a good word for us. We want to use everything our economy gives us. Points inside the PPF are possible, but they're wasteful. You guys have had an economic discussion with your parents at some point when they're like, "Why aren't you getting an A in this class?" Because I'm getting a B. Could you get an A? Well, yeah. They're complaining because you are inside your PPF. And they want you to be on your PPF. They want you to get the best grade you could by fully maximizing your resources. Okay? Points outside the PPF are not possible. Let's see. Michael's mom says, "Michael, why do you have a C in calculus?" Michael says, I can't get anything better than a C in calculus. Michael's mom buys him a graphing calculator. She has improved his technology, and now all of a sudden Michael's calculus PPF moves out, and he can attain an A in calculus. Okay? All right. The PPF also shows you opportunity cost. Every time we increased productivity of one of those goods, we were sacrificing productivity in the other, weren't we? You had a visual representation of opportunity cost between those two goods. Okay? These are the trade-offs that society has to decide. Do we want more food, or do we want to be able to watch cat videos on YouTube? Duh. I mean, who's hungry if you're laughing, right? Of course you want cat videos, okay? The slope of the PPF, and you're not actually ever going to have to do that math, yay, tells you what your opportunity cost is. Tells you how much you have to give up to get more of the other. Okay. You will calculate opportunity cost, but you don't have to use the slope formula. Okay. Oh, I'm all ready for the bell to ring, and it's Wednesday. So I get to go until 05? Sweet! All right. You guys just got all restless at that time. Your body clock's set to be restless? Okay. Alright. Chuck's totally fallen asleep. Herndon looks like he wants to.
Sleeping.
So-
I want a different schedule right
You want a different schedule right
Yeah,
now?
like I feel like we have like 30 minutes left, but we don't.
We're getting there. I'm trying to make it as exciting as I can, but this just isn't really, it's common sense-ish kind of stuff, isn't it? It's not real stimulating. Okay. So if we're gonna gain 100 computers, we're going to give up
1,000.
1,000 bushels of wheat. The opportunity cost per computer is 10 tons of wheat. Oh. Yeah, do you really need those cat videos? Think how many people are gonna starve now. Your level of humanity is awesome, KK. Awesome.
It's like the
Okay.
one lady from last year that only made cake. It's never infinite.
How did you get that Marie
Because she
Antoinette
made the
only
people
ate
starve.
cake
Never
out
mind,
of
we'll talk
my
about this
lecture?
later. We'll talk about this later.
I have to go back and review myself. I'm gonna go back and listen to that lecture and see if I said that Marie Antoinette only ate cake.
Something like that.
Okay,
Some
so-
person-
Apply what you have just learned.
Same person.
Apply what you have just learned. Which country has a lower opportunity cost of cloth? Don't blurt, think. Give everybody time to examine and think. In which country is there a lower opportunity cost of cloth? Maddie, survey says?
Still trying to figure this out.
Okay. We'll get more time. Oh, I know you've got the answer to this because you have your graphic calculator now, Michael. It's okay. All right, Michael.
Is it England?
Michael says England has a lower opportunity cost for cloth. Who agrees? Okay. Who thinks France does? Who really has no clue? That's all right. That's all right. That's why we're here. Michael, tell us why. If you need to get up and point, you can.
I visualized it. Alright, so what I did, I just took the top point and I went down one notch and I saw how far, like how much they lose, and they only lose like that much. And then so I did the same thing here and I went down one notch and I went across, but they lose like that much. So it's more.
That how far apart do I have to spread my fingers to show how much they lost methodology works, because both of these graphs appear to have roughly the same scale. However, when you're graphing in your notebook, you might not achieve that degree of precision. So might I suggest a mathematical approach to this? In France, in order to gain 100 bolts of cloth, 100 cloth, I don't know, 100 hankies. In order to gain 100 thingies of cloth, how much wine do you have to give up?
Like 200.
So let's take the highly technologically advanced ruler and apply it here. Am I roughly perpendicular? Okay, so where do we end up? How much wine do we give up? 200 bottles of wine, barrels of wine, thingies of wine, 200 thingies of wine, okay? Michael, will you go over there and do the same for me on England, please? So to get 100 thingies of cloth in England, we have to give up about 75 thingies of wine? Ish? I don't know, what if we went to 150 cloth? There we give up 100 thingies of wine, right? Okay. All right. Thank you, Michael. So, using numbers better than guesstimation, but Michael still arrived at the correct answer. Okay. Ultimately, the uber easy way to do it, if both graphs have the same scale as which curve is shallower. Lower opportunity cost. Okay. All right. If we improve our availability resources or our technology, we can shift the PPF out. You can shift one end or the other, or it is possible to move the entire PPF out. Okay? Are we on board with this? Just a visual representation of what we already discussed. Ethan, you look like you've got a question. Do you have a question? No? Okay. All right. Let's complicate things a little bit. The PPF can be straight like we just saw, or it can be bowed outward. The PPF will not be bowed inward. PPF can be straight or it can be bowed outward. Okay. The shape of the PPF depends entirely upon what the opportunity cost is between the two goods. When we had a straight line PPF, that meant that we had a fixed opportunity cost. In order to get a bowed PPF, it means that our opportunity cost is variable. Okay? If your opportunity costs increase, you end up with a bowed PPF. If they decreased, you'd end up with that inverted bow, and that just doesn't happen. Okay, so could you see that being like a straight up quiz question? In which instance is the PPF bowed outward? A, there is no opportunity cost. B, opportunity costs are constant. C, opportunity costs are increasing. D, opportunity costs are decreasing. C, opportunity costs are increasing. Okay. In this example, our economy is producing beer or mountain bikes. Please do remember that this is an actual collegiate textbook. Not necessarily intended for high school consumption, nor are its examples intended for high school consumption. Mountain bike your hearts out. Stay away from the bear. Tristan, why is your book naked?
Oh, it is what? Nudist.
No, there are no nudist books in this classroom. There cannot be nudist books any more than there can be nudist students. Unacceptable.
What if like a kid like?
Woo!
Like,
Look at that. Showing the way. Showing the way.
what?
All right.
I'll take the book out.
So the PPF gets steeper the more mountain bikes we make and the less beer we make. What that tells us is that the resources we're using to make our beer are not as good to turn around and use to make mountain bikes. So let me ask you a question. In the real world, if you do PPFs, what do most of them look like? Are they straight lines or are they bowed? Most of them are bowed because resources are generally not completely interchangeable. For instance, how many of you would get the same results if you spent an hour studying calculus or an hour studying English? Will you improve the grade equally in each class? Or are some of you better at one class than the other? Right? Real life tells us that PPFs are rarely constant. Okay? I can mow the lawn in an hour, but I can't clean the house, do the dishes, that kind of stuff in an hour. My skills are varied. All right. So at point A, we have most of our workers making beer, including those who are mechanics and should be adjusting the gears on bikes. Okay. Are they very productive at making beer? No, they're not, and that's why we get a little shallow here. Okay? They're not adding that much more productivity. As we take the worker from down here and add him here, we're getting only a little bit more beer for his extra labor. Okay? Follow? Okay? So if we switch him back over to the mountain bike production line, and isn't this the coolest factory ever? Brewery on one end, Trex mountain bikes on the other. Okay. I think there's a lot of wrecks on the test track. So if we take that mechanic and we pull him out of the brew house and we move him over to the mountain bike productivity, look at how little bit of beer, how little beer we give up, and how much, using the Michael Herndon finger measurement method, and how much of an increase we get in bike production. Okay? Pretty significant, right? Likewise, as we get closer to making more mountain bikes than we do beer, we're pulling some guys out of the brew house and asking them to do things in the bike factory that maybe their skills are not quite suited for. And so we end up giving up a lot of beer and getting just a little bit of bike. Okay? So just from what you've seen and heard here, where on most production possibilities frontiers do you suppose economies end up? Somewhere in the middle, right? If you get too far out to the ends, which is what Kyle asked about a little preemptively, if you get too far out to the ends, you start to force some inefficiencies on your economy. You're not dropping inside the PPF, but there's no point in operating at the extreme because you're not actually fully utilizing your resources. Does this make sense?
Unless there's more of a demand for beer than there are bikes, then
And if there is more of a demand for beer than for bikes, there are other ways that a market or a mixed economy would handle that, but in a command economy, definitely we would say efficiency be darned, let's make beer. Which is why in Soviet Russia, you often had plenty of vodka on the shelves and not enough toothbrushes to go around. So, yeah. Okay. So, just recapping, PPF is bow-shaped when workers have different skills or when, if you're using a different resource to feed into your PPF, if that resource is not equally interchangeable between the two products. Okay? For instance, we're doing a PPF for Arizona and we want to talk cotton farming and corn farming. Okay? Land in Arizona will grow cotton. It'll do it pretty decently. The climate is great. Little fertilizer, you can get some nice cotton. Growing corn in the Phoenix Valley, not going to work for you. Definitely not working. I don't care how much irrigation you throw down. The soil just doesn't do it. Okay? All right. So, I don't need to read this to you, right? Okay. Because you can go back through it, pause. That's the nice thing about the internet. You can pause it. Maybe I'll try and throw a cat on here somewhere for you. Okay. All right. And then this is all just review as well, the difference between micro and macro. Okay, positive statements, normative statements. A positive statement is trying to describe the world as the economist sees it. Okay, Michael, stand up. Kyle, stand up for me, please. Stand here in front of everyone, side by side. Michael is shorter than Kyle. This is a positive statement. Okay, it is the way that I see the world. Michael is shorter than Kyle. Okay? Got it? You may be seated. A normative statement tries to say how the world should be. Michael should seek some hormone treatments so that he can be as tall as Kyle.
You're perfect the way you are, Michael.
Thank you.
Okay. You're beautiful.
All right. If the statement includes ought to or should, it's gonna probably be a normative statement. Now, gentlemen, will you stand for me again, please? Michael is taller than Kyle. That is also a positive economic statement. Positive statements don't have to be true. They just have to be testable. A positive statement can be proven false. All we have to do is get a tape measure, and that positive statement is not accurate, but it's still a positive statement. It's how I see the world. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Okay. Normative statements are generally based in opinion. Positive statements based in fact, although they can be incorrect. They can be confirmed or refuted. Okay? Normative statement, you can't prove. You can't prove. All right. What's positive, what's normative? Prices rise when the government increases the quantity of money. Positive or normative?
Positive.
Positive. We can test that. Let's increase the quantity of money and see if prices rise. The government should print less money. How do you know? Should. A tax cut is needed to stimulate the economy.
Positive. It's testable, you can see it.
But it's an opinion.
It's an opinion. It's an opinion. Maybe the economy doesn't need to be stimulated. You haven't proven that. Right? Is needed is another way of saying should. The government should put in place a tax cut to stimulate the economy. Okay? All right? An increase in the price of burritos will cause an increase in consumer demand for music downloads. It's positive. We can test it. Let's raise the price of burritos and see if iTunes sales go up. I know, it doesn't make sense. No.
Taco Bell